I have a saying that venture capitalists have a business model too. And the more entrepreneurs understand what that business model is, the better they are in being able to raise capital.
Peter Saddington, your big game hunter. And guys, we have our sights on someone special today. Only a mother could invest in this idea.
Made this like super artistic.
That is actually absolutely correct. And that's a very, very astute assessment, actually.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of VC Hunting with me, your big game hunter, Peter Saddington. We are out to find and discover the untold stories of venture capital and to know the money. I am so blessed today to have a great guest, Bill Bryant, partner at Threshold, which is an early stage VC firm previously known as DFJ. He's been in the tech startup world for 30 plus years. Thanks so much, Bill, for joining the show.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to connect with you and then share my story with your audience. And
Awesome. Well, let's start off at the very beginning, because this is something that you were talking to me previously before we even hit the record button. But back in 1983, Microsoft came into Seattle and really began a huge burgeoning growth of technology, ideas, entrepreneurs, and obviously lots and lots of money that ended up pouring into that area. You were fortunate enough to be there during the very beginning. And if I may say, that really is where you started. Is that fair?
That is totally fair. Coming out of school back in the mid 80s, the major employers were Boeing, Weyerhaeuser, Georgia Pacific. There was a bank called Seafirst Bank, now part of Bank of America. And those were the dominant companies. There really was, there was some medical tech devices, but no software as we know it today. Microsoft shows up in 83 and completely changes the trajectory of Seattle. I'm sure many of your audience members have visited Seattle, but between Microsoft and Amazon and a whole slew of others, Expedia and Zillow and Concur and hundreds and now thousands of startups, it has completely transformed the Seattle economy for the better. I mean, it provided me, who was an aspiring entrepreneur. I always knew from an early on phase in life, at age 12 or something like that, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Did not know what that meant. Didn't know whether I would apply that, but I just felt like I wanted to do something on my own terms and carve out my own destiny. And fortunately, software arrived at the time that I was entering the workforce and began a total, it's hard to describe the transformation that's happened in Seattle over the last 30 years, where we have hundreds of thousands of technical workers now and thousands of startups. And when I started in 88, there were roughly 30 people in the community that had entrepreneurial we would connect. The group that brought us together was called the MIT Enterprise Forum. It still exists.
Wow.
It's a national kind of effort that was spawned out of MIT, but there was a chapter here that brought people to the aspiring entrepreneurs together, and there were literally like 30 to 40 people who would show up, and that was it. You knew everything that was going on. Today, obviously, there's the market's so vast. So there are hundreds and thousands of entrepreneurs and hundreds of startups, and it's just impossible to keep track of everything. But there was a time in the late 80s when I felt like I knew virtually everything that was going on in Seattle. Every startup.
That must have been a really special time to be part of, like, the firmament, the beginning of the movement in tech, and being really familiar with all, you said 30 or so, right? Really having a first name basis with all these. Would it be fair to say, you don't have to name anyone, but some of the industry giants of today is kind of how you were hanging out with them back in the early 80s, right?
Yeah, very much so. And you can trace the lineage of the startups today back to many of those early precursor companies. One of the the company that I was involved with that really changed my own personal trajectory was Vizio, not the screen maker, but the drag and drop visual drawing product that I think many coders use even today.
Yes.
As part of Microsoft Office, and that company. So the second major company in Seattle after Microsoft was a company called Aldus Corporation, ALDUS, and they had a product called PageMaker, which was a desktop page layout product that was used to, create brochures and sales collateral and flyers and whatnot.
And that was the precursor to Publisher, right? Or at least the idea.
Yeah, well, Publisher was Microsoft Publisher. I think that was a low end product. But PageMaker was designed for the professional graphic designer who was charged with creating sales and marketing kind of collateral. I was my wife was actually an early employee there, but PageMaker or Aldus. One of the founders started Vizio, and so that's how I got involved with Vizio at an early on phase as ran sales and marketing. Was employee 19, so there were a bunch of technical product folks ahead of me, and we joined about 4 months prior to our market launch in what was that then 91, and the company took off very rapidly. It was the last desktop. Wasn't aware of it at the time, but it was the last desktop software company to emerge. The era of desktop software kind of died with Vizio's emergence, in that Microsoft consolidated the space around Office and sucked the air out of all the other companies. And then also in the mid 90s we had the emergence of the internet, which totally obliterated desktop. Changed everything. But yeah, Vizio got me involved in tech startups, and I went from there to a succession of startups from '88 to 2006. Along the way, advised others and was a board member at several others, and then in 2007 joined DFJ as a partner, and have been doing venture capital for the last 12 years. And over that time, I've been involved with, I'm not sort of humble bragging here, but I have been involved with more successful Seattle software companies than anybody else, about 25 now to date.
Well, there's nothing wrong about stating the truth. And, there's so much here that I want to unpack, but we have a limited time. But if we can go back just a little bit, you surprised me, to be frank, Bill. You surprised me that when you said that you wanted to be an entrepreneur since 12 years old. That's not something that I've ever heard from any other venture capitalist so far that I've interviewed. And so this is a really unique thing. I have to ask, because I wrote this down real quick. What was your first idea? What was your first entrepreneurial idea?
It was what we call sweet greens today. I mean, that was the idea. I wanted to, I thought, a salad bar with millions of options is kind of. I'd worked at a Baskin Robbins.
So you wanted to be the
early in my high school. So I was applying the 31 flavors to, a salad bar. But I had a lot of different. I imported. At one point, I imported sunglasses that had a little transistor radio embedded in the earpiece. Ooh. So you would have, you could have a little radio experience with your sunglasses.
We could bring that back, Bill. We could.
Yeah, right. Yeah, a friend and I designed. We were fishermen, a little bit of not serious, but we sort of noticed that flies, for trout fishing, resembled women's earrings. So we were thinking about designing, flies basically, but that were women's earrings. Yeah. So those were some of the early early ideas.
Those are awesome. They're what's so fascinating about these different ideas, from women's earrings to eyeglasses to a salad bar, is it's so eclectic. And I think if we look, and certainly I've done a little bit of digging, but if we certainly look at the type of investments you've made in the past, there really is no theme. There really is there's no, I hesitate to say that there's no thesis. I think there is an internal thesis, probably based on values and principles that I probably want to talk about in a little bit. But in terms of overarching themes of, Bill Bryant's investments, there really hasn't been one. Is that a fair statement to say?
That's an astute observation. Yeah, I have, I've been involved with core infrastructure software, e-commerce, gaming, healthcare, fintech, tech-enabled services. I mean, I've done just a lot of investing across the gamut, and kind of two reasons for that. One is that you can't be thematic here in Seattle. There's not enough of any one thing to just focus on, X or Y. Now in the Valley, you keep in mind, Seattle's a kind of a tenth of what happens in the Valley. And in the Valley, you have to be thematic in order to be competitive for deals. You have to demonstrate very deep domain expertise and track specific entrepreneurs and trends and so forth to be credible with the entrepreneur. Here, that's not the case. We just don't have enough of any one thing other than, just enterprise software, I guess, would be the category. But otherwise, we don't have, 10, 20, 30, 50 startups in an area. And the second thing is that I as an entrepreneur, I am always, what I'm looking for are these aspirational, visionary individuals who have, spent the last months or years of their life trying to work out an issue, a problem, and I want to see the world through their lens. And when we connect, when they tell me what they're all about and why. The motivation that's really driving them, that's what I get excited about. And I want to help those entrepreneurs realize their own personal dreams. So so I view myself as very much a generalist. It's maybe a dying category of venture. I don't know. It's worked well for me and has given me breadth of experience across lots of different domains that I can use to apply in a new setting. So very comfortable in, pretty much every category, enterprise, consumer, hard tech. I'm involved with a hardware appliance company in the Valley. So so I do a lot of different types of investing.
So I'm going to say, because you started moving away from the ideas and moving towards talking about individuals. So I think it's pretty clear that you're a type of investor that invests in the entrepreneur, in the founder, in the individual themselves. Yeah. I'm curious now, what are some of the questions that you generally ask these entrepreneurs, these founders, so that you can have a better understanding whether they're worth investing in? Because certainly many of them, I'm sure that you've met, have been on a similar journey. They've been grinding for months, maybe even years. So there's a lot of persistence there. We got that in common. But what is that extra ingredient? What's that extra secret sauce that you're looking for? And what type of questions do you ask?
Well, I asked you the question before we got started, why? I mean, what are you doing this for? What's your motivation? And I really start with that too, because, being an entrepreneur, I mean, I've gone, my first company that I personally started, I went, 18 months with no paycheck and nothing. And before I raised my first little bit of capital, which was honestly $60,000. That's what I raised.
Booyah!
Yeah. So, yeah. And so there's, being an entrepreneur is very hard. And there are always dark days, even if you're successful out of the gate, raising capital, building a company is just extraordinarily difficult. So I really want to understand the motivation of an entrepreneur to really, will this person push through? Do they have the kind of grit? And I don't think an entrepreneur, it's not a rational decision. It's not a logical decision. It's something that's driving them internally, and they just have to get this done, or life is a failure. And I really want to understand that. And why are you going to sacrifice the next 10 years of your life versus taking a nice job at Facebook, Google, Amazon, whoever,
Right.
collecting a paycheck and squirreling some away, and
That would
preparing for retirement.
certainly be the quote unquote
Yeah,
easier and
yeah,
more, the easier path per se, the more prescriptive path per se. But I want to pinpoint on something here,
yeah,
Bill. And you use the words when you're talking to these individuals, these entrepreneurs, these founders, and trying to understand, what makes them tick, the
yeah.
why behind the what that they're doing.
Yeah.
You said that they have a lot of dark days, and you also said that it's extraordinarily difficult. And I saw by the way that your face scrunched up that
Mhm.
this is something that's coming from your heart. I mean, it's
Yeah.
clear that you have experienced some dark days. You've experienced some excruciatingly difficult moments in startups
Sure.
and
Yep.
entrepreneurship. And so I'd love if you can think of something off the top of your head. What was something, a dark day, an excruciatingly difficult decision or difficult circumstance that you personally had to go through that gives you a better perspective
Yeah.
for the investments you make today?
Look, in two of my startups, I ended up pitching to over 100 potential investors before I found the one or two that wanted to back what I was doing. So, and I had to, each day I had to wake up and question: am I going to push forward today? Am I going to do it one more day? Given that I'd had, all of these rejections in the past, and you had to have that motivation from inside that says, "Yep, this is what I'm destined to do," versus go take a job somewhere else. So I've been fired as a CEO for my own startup. I've done. There have been so many. You have founder quarrels that are hugely disappointing because you thought you knew this person and you've been working alongside them, and suddenly you realize that your values and what you think of as how you want to conduct yourself is different from your co-founder. So there have been lots of issues along the way, and there always are. I mean, I've yet to encounter a startup that had absolutely smooth sailing day after day. It just got better and better and better each and every day. I've got told the many entrepreneurs that it's always the case that the next quarter is the most critical in the company's existence. It's always that. I mean,
isn't that always the case though?
It's always this quarter we have to get this. We have to get these things done. And you come to the end of the quarter, you go, okay, we got existential threats. So we have to do these things in the next 90 days and the next 90. It's just a continual grind until the end, but it's so rewarding because of the people that get attracted and to a aspirational, vision-led kind of mission-driven organization that has values and principles. That the people element is fantastic, and there's just nothing like it. You just cannot replicate the idea that a group of people come together collectively and are trying to move something forward and tangibly can make a difference. That's just something you cannot find in Amazon. I mean, Amazon's a fantastic organization, but what do they have, like 800,000 people? So you're one of 800,000 people. You're going to do, maybe you're a 10Xer even, but
right.
The contribution you can make to a large company is just
I can totally tell, Bill. I can totally tell that you love the process of work, of the whole process of startups. And I think you really enjoy it, if I may say. I think you really enjoy it from the human perspective. You remind me of a quote from Jerry Weinberg, a famous author. He said that there are no technical issues. He said every issue is a human one. And I think that's very much the truth when it comes to startups. And I truly believe you enjoy the process and the rewarding process of seeing people flourish. And you've used a lot of language that tells me that you actually probably enjoy coaching young entrepreneurs and startup founders through this because you have so much experience. You've been at the table so many times. You've had the pattern recognition. So you understand all of this stuff. Is that fair?
It's totally fair. It's just, this is what I don't get involved with the details of the product side. I mean, I assume that's going to take care of itself. Smart people are going, they're going to get the feedback from the market. The customer's going to share what they want and all of that. And and engineers are going to build the product. But I get involved with the team building pieces, and just making sure that the culture is there. And that's one thing I've come to realize, that the enduring foundation of any great company is the culture that's built, the values and principles and management style and communication and decision making, and those sorts of things are what knit these companies together. So spend a lot of time with founders and founding teams to make sure that they're strong cultured, not weak cultured. Weak cultures break down into politics and factions and cliques and all of those sorts of things. And strong cultures keep the collective together.
I'm going to jump right in there. What would you say, out of all the experience that you've had with a multiplicity of varying different corporate and startup cultures, what would you say would be one of the pieces of glue that ensures that a strong culture does exist? Is it, can I say, the leader? Does it start and end with the leader? Is that the easy, short answer? Or is it a little bit more nuanced?
Yeah, it's so, every culture is unique and different, and that's fine. It's not like there's one canonical culture that should pervade every organization, and it's up to that leader to galvanize a process where the people come together and say, this is what's important to us. This is how we want to act as a society, as a group, and just extract that from the organization, and then publish it, and then find the ways to recognize and reward those things. I mean, the cultures need to be actionable and put in place. And so, you hire for the values that you espouse, and very specifically, you have interview loops that, yes, you check off the technical, can this person do what we need them to do, but you're really checking for culture fit and a culture add as well. I mean, that's another, terminology that's used, but you want to make sure that this person can fit in a way that can contribute and elevate everybody's game. So
it's almost like the more experience that you've garnered in venture capital, and the more experience that you've garnered in with all of these startups, it's almost easier to focus on the thing that really matters, right? And you don't need to focus on the product, because you said smart people figure out the product, they'll get great feedback from the market. It's almost as if, like, I'm making this up as I go here, but the first 20 years in venture capital, you care a lot about everything. And then after you get past the 20-year threshold into the 30 where you are, it's like, a lot of that stuff kind of takes care of itself.
Takes care of itself. Yeah.
Right.
Smart people are going to do, by and large, 95% of the decisions they make are going to be the right ones. Okay, good. So let's focus on the 5% that you have divergence and can really, you've got a lot of wisdom there.
So I'm going to ask you a tough question here, and I don't know if you're prepared for it, but I'm just going to ask it outright and I'll be a little bit transparent here. I have been fired from my own startup before, and it was a jarring, world-shattering experience. I felt like I was literally going to die, because you put your heart, your soul, I'm kind of tearing up here right now just thinking about it, but you put your heart, your soul, everything into it. And so when you said that you've been fired for your own startup, my sympathy, my empathy, my heart just went boom.
Yeah.
Tell me, how was that experience, being fired from your own startup? And what did you do to get through that, to get to a point where you could begin to work or even function again? I'm just curious.
So totally devastating. Absolutely. You go off into a cave and, curl up, and you want to, just like, what happened? But, after a few weeks, maybe months, I don't recall specifically the time frame, but, the belief in yourself came back. The belief in myself came back and said, look, it's an opportunity to do another startup for me. And I was like, okay, so what other idea and team and, do I have in my head that I want to pursue? And it's, I come from the point of view that entrepreneurs are definitely they're born and not made. That there was something inside of me that said, I am never going to be able to work for, a corporation and go rise up the hierarchy and all of that. And it was probably a self-inflated view of myself that I thought, okay, I actually am a really smart guy, and I don't want to do what somebody else is deciding. I want to be in a place where I am making the decisions, and then never going to work for anybody. And I just kept returning to that in the dark days and saying, okay, this is why I'm doing it. And when I had my moments where I was fired, fired a couple times actually, because not
Gotta have a thick skin by now.
Yeah, no, but I really I came to a better realization of where my skill sets were and what I was good at. There was a time when process eventually wins as companies get larger and larger, and people come to, more and more people need to be organized and coordinated and orchestrated and whatnot. Process eventually wins out. You have to have replicable processes and systems and controls and all of that. Okay. That wasn't me as an entrepreneur. I just was making it up and, figuring out how do we break through. And, I was really good at inventing the process. I wasn't good at applying the process and, scaling that for long term. And I just came to that realization that my utility was in a early stage company that was trying to figure it out as an entrepreneur. That I did not have utility in companies that were getting into the hundreds of people and tens of millions, because that's when processes need to be put in place, and I'm just not that way. Now today, as a venture capitalist, I have that in my head, so I can tell entrepreneurs who I see are they've been they're creating those first time processes, and then I say, no, now we have to systematize and apply this and be able to scale. So it's a self-realization of my own weaknesses as an individual, and that I then share with the entrepreneurs as they're running into these issues. I say, okay, if you can't define and build the things that allow us to be scalable as an organization, then we're going to have another discussion where I'm firing you because you're the person holding us back now.
Right.
Yeah.
It's great that you're so self-aware, and I resonate completely with kind of the way that you operate. I'm very much the same. I love creating, discovering, having self-emergence happen through the early stages. But once we get to I call it what I consider the clinical facets of organizations, where we've substantiated processes, they're repeatable, we can sprint and continue to build great software. That's where I tend to begin to think, all right, where can I reapply myself and begin anew and create something fascinating, create something that's wholly different. So I really resonate with that. And so that type of kind of appetite, that type of internal motivation to continue to reinvent, recreate, and help young entrepreneurs is why you've moved into this threshold with early stage firms. And that's what you're doing now. So tell us, what is exciting you about the early stage venture capital scene today? And what makes it a little bit different from your vantage point in Seattle versus what we all know and is all over the news from Silicon Valley?
Yeah. So, I in some ways view myself as an accidental venture capitalist. I did not anticipate,
You're good.
Am I still on?
You are still on.
Okay. Well, I don't see you, but that's all right. Oh yeah, here, I'm sorry. Of course, there you go. So when I joined DFJ at the time, but Threshold today, it was very much as a part-time deal scout to help them build connectivity here in the Seattle community. They had made an initial investment in Redfin and saw that there was something happening in Seattle, didn't really know how to access the deal flow up here. when I joined, I thought, okay, well, this will, recharge the battery. I spent 18 years doing serial startups and had, my wife, 4 kids. It was just the right time to spend focused on the family, which I hadn't been in that prior 18 years. But I thought a year or 2 in venture capital, I would be sufficient, and then I would return to, doing a startup of some form. But as it happened, I, would identify one company, then a second, then a third, then a fourth, and before I knew it, I had 5 or 6 portfolio companies under my wing, and it's no longer just a part-time gig; it's relatively full-time. And I also realized too that I'd passed my shelf life really as an entrepreneur, in the sense that being an entrepreneur is this obsession, and it's a 7/24 obsession. And the life of a venture capitalist is very different. The problems are not yours. Okay, you're a coach, you're an advisor, you're a counselor, you're a therapist, you're whatever. But ultimately, I could sleep at night, okay? And I didn't wake up in the morning when taking a shower, thinking about all the things I needed to do as an entrepreneur. So the stress level is radically different. And I just started to appreciate that the work-life balance and the opportunity to deeply engage with my family and, do some other things were important. And I had my good times as an entrepreneur, and it worked out well for me in a couple of different situations. So I didn't feel the need to go prove myself as an entrepreneur. And then as a venture capitalist, it's the next best thing. It's the vicarious living.
You get to come to the parties, right?
yeah, some of them at least. But yeah, it's not your deal, so it doesn't have the deep emotional resonance that your own startup has. But you're able to see and help more people, and just kind of get a little bit of the taste of what entrepreneurship is like. So it just became the right decision, and here I am now 13 years in, and that's it. Okay, I'm very happy. It's been good. I'm enjoying when I look back on I've been successful as an investor, but I think about the thousands now. Many I should calculate it again, but it's thousands of jobs that these companies that I backed have created. And
that's really awesome.
Yeah, and hopefully hundreds of people whose life they'll get meaningful value out of this the startup, and change their personal economic lives, and maybe another 20 will go on to go start another company and replicate it. So I feel like it's
super rewarding.
Yeah, in a different way. I mean, you're in one company and it grows to 300 people, let's say, and that'd be a success. That's great, but here I'm in a position to invest in across 6, 8, 10 companies, and collectively they're generating thousands of jobs and changing thousands of people's lives.
Which is basically what you and I were talking about offline before we even began this. So it's really nice for me personally, sitting here listening to you, to hear that come around full circle, because that's got to be such a rewarding position to be in. And I bet the rewards are in terms of the variability, infinite. Growing from 1-2 people to 300 is a win, or getting $1 million MRR is a win for another company, or being able to break the constraint of getting into Canada for this other company or whatever. I'm making stuff up. I mean, it's really cool to be able to have all those different reward opportunities that you would have never have garnered through your sole own entrepreneurship company if you work on that. But I want to ask a question. In a TechCrunch article on July 31st of 2016, so we're going a little bit back here, Bill. You said that in the past that you only invest in transformative innovation, and that you hold the notion as venture investors, it is, quote, incumbent upon us to identify enduring and iconic companies addressing large-scale challenges. This was in a TechCrunch article. Is that still a a
Yeah,
vision is something that you hold today? Is that what you're doing with your pre-seed investments through Threshold?
yeah. So and I think you're maybe hidden in there is that the enduring iconic companies don't present themselves that way in the very earliest phases.
Right, that's where I was
How do you
going.
know? Okay, how do you know? But yes, but we're not typically seed stage investors. We're Series A
Okay,
investors.
early stage, that's right.
So yeah, so early, but not the very earliest. But yeah, I come from I'm sure that I have met with now well over 10,000 entrepreneurs, and in some capacity or another. And if you don't start with a very big idea, then potentially a big idea, then it's really hard to attract talent and capital, and most of the companies that I meet with, entrepreneurs, they're just working on a problem that is just, it's important to them. It's important in some way, shape, or form to the world, but it's just not going to be big enough for venture to enter into the equation. I have a saying that venture capitalists have a business model too. And the more entrepreneurs understand what that business model is, the better they are in being able to raise capital. So for example, when an entrepreneur says, I'm raising 5 million, instantly in my head, I'm thinking, okay, based on the kind of deal that I think I might be able to construct, would my stake in this company be worth 50 million in 5 to 7 years, 10x? Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so in order for my stake to be worth 50 million, the company, and I think, okay, well, I think 5 million might get me 20%, let's say, right, to make the math easy. Okay. So this company would have to be worth 250 million on this capital alone, get to that point on this 5 million in order for my business model to work. Okay. And, I spit that back to the, and the entrepreneur saying, I think I can get to, 22 million in the next 5 years. I say, that's fantastic. That's great. You should do that, but it's not the right deal for us. And that's why, the companies that I backed are addressing, very, very large opportunities in a highly, the conventional word is disruptive, but just a way that if they can create this wedge into a very large market, they do have that opportunity to scale into the hundreds of millions in revenue that will justify us putting in tens of millions
for sure
into the business. So it's just this understanding that, as venture capitalists, we have a game secret too. Is we make a ton of mistakes in terms of the companies we back and the companies we pass on, but we make a large number of mistakes at the early stages, and it is this 1 or 2 out of 10 deals that make a fund. There's this very much a power law that happens, and the returns accrue to a couple of companies in a portfolio of 25. If you've got 4 amazing companies, that's a fantastic fund. Okay. Awesome. And the rest you kind of break even on, you make a little money, you lose a little money, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But the 4 or 5 companies in the fund really make all the difference in the world. And you have to have, this amazing vision around what you're trying to accomplish in order for that to happen.
That's awesome. I love kind of the context around it, which is that you've kind of earned the right to be able to have this type of deal flow and to be able to have these types of requirements at the deal table and be able to do the math of all your pattern recognition, all your experience of these companies going from 0 to hero or 0 to nothing. And so it's really appreciated for me, especially, that you're able to say that here online and say, hey, look, founders, entrepreneurs, you guys have a game. You guys have a script. You guys have something that you have in mind. But you also have to understand, we VCs, we have a game too. We have strategies too. We need to see the multiples that we are expecting per the responsibilities and the other people that we're dealing with. So it's really great to be able to hear that and be reminded of that, because I know that as a founder entrepreneur, when I'm sitting at the deal table, it's generally one of the things that I think of last. And usually it's in the emails after the meeting. I'm thinking, oh, shoot, what is this guy's thesis again? What are the multiples he's expected before? Like, right. And so that's generally never enters the purview of my conversation at the table. So it's nice to be able to hear that, hey, there are two games being played. And I think the founder needs to be able to recognize that.
My brethren, many of, VCs will do these white space exercises and try to figure out sectors of, that predict where capital is going to flow. And I just, I've just always thought, entrepreneur, we do that. We do a weekend retreat and we try to figure out, where are the hot spots. And I contrast that to an entrepreneur who has spent, months to years of their life just deeply immersed in a problem area, and the knowledge that they have and the understanding and the nuances of the market is orders of magnitude above what
you could never earn that. You could never get that.
Yeah, you just can't do it. So just when venture capitalists are saying the next big thing is, fill in the blank, that doesn't do anything for me.
For you, your response would be fill in the blank is a person. So you probably need to figure out who that person is. Yeah. In 2015, you did have a quote. You said, there's one area that I'd be cautious about. Bitcoin is overhyped. No one has built a fantastic business yet. Do you still believe that 3 years later, that Bitcoin's overhyped? Or what is your opinion on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency now? Just curious.
We're 10 years in, and we were fortunate on the growth. Our growth team did invest in Coinbase, and that's been a fantastic investment. But it's arguably the one, and for all of the money that has gone into it, and a lot of it is that we are big believers that blockchain technology can be highly disruptive to lots of different sectors. We just couldn't get our minds wrapped around, crypto as currency just didn't make a lot of sense other than as speculation. And, and there's been no sector that we've spent more time on with fewer results than crypto, for sure. We have met with hundreds of companies and just couldn't wrap our minds around how this one was going to get to the
end game.
Yeah. So, I, as a personal investor, probably should have thrown in some Ethereum along the way or whatever. But but I'm comfortable not having stayed clear of the.
That's awesome. That works, and that's fine. Coinbase is probably the one ring to rule them all. So having invested in Coinbase, you did pretty well there. Last question here, Bill, man. I appreciate this so much. It's been a life-giving conversation to me. In another TechCrunch article, there was a caveat, and that you said that you were exploring new chapters. You're exploring new chapters with being a partner at Threshold. So what are some of the chapters that you're exploring that are non-VC? You alluded to spending more time with your family and your 4 kids, but I'm just curious, as you get more mature, as you get more experienced in your age, what are some of the areas that you're wanting to explore personally that are really exciting you now in 2019?
There's some personal, we're avid travelers. You can always do more travel, and we see another country that we haven't. Want to pick up, enhance my cooking skills. I'm a decent cook, but I want to make sure I get better on that front. I had a vegetable garden when I was a teenager, and I enjoyed that. I'm gonna do that. Lots of books to read, and things like that. There's a project I'm working on, and we should have maybe another chat in 45 days or so. I'll be a little more open about that, but there is a pretty exciting thing that I'm kind of working on right now. And it's being an entrepreneur and being an investor. So I'm excited to apply lessons that I've learned as an investor into a kind of a fund vehicle. So
wow. Well, if you're okay with it, I'm gonna officially invite you to our next season on the
okay.
BC Hunting Show. So in 45 days,
Yeah.
so you can come back on and tell us what this is. You got my curiosity going, my brother.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thanks so much, William,
Really
for
fun.
being Bill, for being on the show. I appreciate it very much, and we'll have you
I
on again.
appreciate the invite. It was really fun, and look forward to seeing you in real life.
Absolutely. I mean, what can a brother say? What can a brother say after an interview like that? It was just life-giving. It was just life-giving to talk to someone like Bill Bryant from Threshold Ventures. It was just life-giving. He had so much experience, so much knowledge, so much wisdom, and what you guys didn't get to see is the conversation that we had pre-interview and post-interview, which was just amazingly sincere, candid, honest, and I just loved every minute of it. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation just as much as I do. There was a couple things that I really obviously enjoyed so much about his experience is that he got to see the tech startup world really blossom and I had kind of set it off in the beginning of the interview with Microsoft dropping their anchor into Seattle in 1983, and then him joining Microsoft in 1988 as being a VP of marketing, I believe, or sales of the Visio program that I've used multiple times as an engineer developer and trying to create process flows and drag and drop stuff with Visio. So it's really cool to know that he was a part of the beginning of that. But it's really cool that the amount of experience that he has working with multiple startups, seeing how they grow, seeing how they exit, seeing the ecosystem in Seattle change from what it was, very intimate, to what it is now, even larger, but still generalist, as you guys remember him talking about, where he doesn't have themes, he doesn't have a thesis per se, he invests in entrepreneurs, and I think that is really, really encouraging. Now, you probably have heard that before, right? You've probably heard other VCs, other angel investors, and these types of individuals say that they invest in the people themselves, but I'll tell you, and I've heard this, I'll be really honest. I've heard this so many times, and I'll even go farther. I've heard people tell me that they invest in people, hustle, grind, but they didn't invest in me. Which, some of you guys know, man, I'm the grind master. And so what I mean to say is that when I heard it from Bill, when I heard Bill Bryant say that he invests in entrepreneurs, he invests in the individual themselves, I know without a shadow of a doubt he absolutely means it, because he's been there, he's seen it, he understands that people who are in venture capital early in the game, everything's important. Right? Everything's important, from the term sheet to the product they're building to the market analysis to understanding the metrics to the trajectory to everything, right? Everything's so important. But as you get older, you realize that if you figure out who the great people are, the hustlers, the grinders, the doers, those that are smart and intelligent, and just like Bill said, 95% of all that, 95% of that with the smart individual ends up just working itself out. And so his job as a coach and mentor to these companies is to really help them through the dark times, right? As he said, through the dark times, through the extraordinarily difficult times, through the dark days, he's there helping his startups and helping those individuals persevere and continue going on. I really, really love this. And I love the fact that he said, and I never heard this before, I love the fact that he said that at 12 years old, he wanted to be an entrepreneur. At 12 years old, if I can think back to when I was 12 years old, I don't think I was thinking about being an entrepreneur. I was probably trying to be like Pele. I wanted to be a soccer player like Pele or Maradona, but didn't want to be an entrepreneur. It's so funny that he did like a salad bar. He had a salad bar idea, eyeglasses with radio, and women's earrings, just like those flies for fishing. Oh man, what a great dude! What a great dude. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode just as much as I did. I can't wait to have Bill Bryant back on in our next season, 45 days or so, hopefully, or maybe not perfectly 45 days, but I definitely want to hear what he has brewing coming up. Could be something worth taking a look at, a hard look at. Again, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you find your way over to vchunting.com/Bill Bryant. You'll find more information on this episode and my opinions and my write-up of all of it right there. Make sure also to join our newsletter. You'll want to be on that. We're going to be not giving away, but we're going to be talking about and giving you guys information from behind the scenes. Thanks so much, guys, for being here on this episode, and see you guys next time.